Welcome back to another episode of Harmonious at Lunch, the show that fuels your business success. I'm Brandon Gano, your host and guide through the world of harmonious business growth. Today, we're unlocking powerful strategies with industry experts to help your business thrive. If you're a business owner, entrepreneur, or executive, you are in the right place. Join me and our incredible guests today on the journey to clarity, growth, and success. It is time to revolutionize your approach to business. Let's dive in with another episode of Harmonious at Lunch. Welcome back into some more bite-sized business advice. We got an episode today with one of my favorite people. I love when I get to interview my friends on my podcast. And we're talking about a topic that's probably going to piss a lot of people off. It's delegation for reluctant delegators, but also a little caveat, why a VA is not a good first hire. So if you're still here with us, please stick around. We're going to explain all of that and paint the path forward. But I want to welcome Ashlee Berghoff to the show. Welcome in. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Brandon. I'm thrilled to be here. Excited for our conversation.
You say that now because you haven't read the comments down below about how people already disagree with us based on the title. So I'm sure they're there. Let's ease their fears, though, because set the scene for me. What is, when you say delegation for reluctant delegators, that's a mouthful, first of all. I'm not qualified to say that. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so I've been in the game for a while, and one of the things I hear often from people is, I want to grow this past my own capacity, but I am miserable about the idea of hiring and delegating. I don't think I can afford it. I had a terrible experience. It was the worst thing ever. Don't know what to give someone to do, like all of the kind of big obstacles. And, there are a lot of people out there who happily have solopreneur businesses, kind of freelancer-based businesses their whole careers, and that's great. What's miserable is when you want something bigger, but you don't know how to delegate, and you're kind of stuck in this limbo between those two worlds where you're kind of stressing yourself out, doing way too much, trying to build something bigger without a team.
Yeah, and I mean, what I see a lot of times with a VA specifically, if you go right to that route, people hire VAs thinking they're more than what they are, and they don't realize that that's someone you have to manage. So whether they're a part-time VA or a part-time like on-staff hire, you still have to manage this person, and you're really not saving anything if you don't have everything else set up. And I think that's what we're talking about today, with the why is a VA a bad first hire. So why don't we start to unpack that a little bit, and then definitely reassure people that there is an option, and we'll help them make a good first hire and actually delegate. But you tell me, in what you've seen, why is a VA a terrible first hire?
Yeah, so virtual assistants are great at running systems that already exist, that are recurring, that are well-defined, that are well captured and tracked and managed. Exactly like you're saying, a VA needs someone to lead them. They're going to come in and say, hey, I'm here. How can I help you? And that's no shade on virtual assistants. The other thing that is a big bummer is when I say virtual assistant, I'm specifically talking about kind of an administrative assistant level person, whether that's due to experience or role or whatever that is, right? There are about 150 different titles for people in an operations role in corporate. And for some reason out here in the entrepreneurial space, we've collapsed it into 3 at most, right? So there's a huge range. And so a lot of people will say, like, I'm a VA and I do way more than that. And you're right, but you probably need a different title, right? We need a lot more nuance around this. But like VA generalists, as kind of generally understood, are going to come in to execute the work. But if you're someone who doesn't already have amazing deep decks of well-defined work for them to do, you're going to just kind of stare blankly at each other across the screen while they're waiting for you to give them stuff to do. And you don't have time to do that.
Yeah. So, well, first of all, why are there so many titles for operations in corporate? I understand on the flip side, the small business side, like we're anti-titles. We don't want to, just give titles out to give them out. But why is there so many different options in corporate?
Yeah, I mean, I think in the corporate sphere, one of the things they get right is they recognize the power of operations generally, right? You have powerful people with kind of operations brains in corporate. They see it as a driver of value, of profitability. Efficiency can turn into huge numbers on the bottom line for them, right? They can streamline something 10% and all of a sudden make millions of extra dollars, right? So there's that. And then kind of an understanding of the path that people go through from the moment you kind of start out of college and kind of an admin assistant role and then move your way up over time. And I think there's kind of this thing in operation or in the entrepreneurship where most entrepreneurs don't enjoy that side, right? That's not what they're coming out of. They hated the kind of the structure and the kind of tightness of all the policies and procedures in corporate life. And that's why they're leaving, right? So they kind of want to pretend all of that doesn't exist and wasn't necessary, right? And a lot of times they're right in that it was way too restrictive, kind of killed the joy and the culture or whatever. But I think that's some of it. It's kind of this reaction of like, all of that structure sucks, so I'm going to live without any of it over here. And then there's also this kind of natural misunderstanding of like, oh, well, ops is just admin and admin's easy. So AI is going to take over all of that. So I should be able to do all this for free. And none of it matters that much. And I can just go out there and make a ton of money until, they start missing client deadlines, or they didn't show up to that really important sales call because they forgot it was on their calendar, or something gets left on the table because you don't have time to deliver it. And then all of a sudden it matters. And then they go to things and people say, go hire a VA, and they go hire a VA, but they don't know what to get them and they don't understand what operations is. And then they don't get much value from that relationship. Right.
Yeah. It's quite the line you just drew. Ops is admin, admin is AI, and we're all going to be obsolete. Please don't do that. If you're running a business, let's help anyone who agreed with that statement. Let's shake their brains a little bit. So we were talking before about, okay, VA, right to VA is bad, but you need a lot of systems and structure in place so that they can thrive, which I fully agree with. But what I also just heard you say is there's a lot of work now on my plate to get ready for a VA. So how do we start to chart this path? Because I think even a lot of our listeners are upper 6-7 figure revenue businesses. They have employees, but they're on that line of like, do I need just a part-time VA to help with maybe a number of people on our team streamline something or some things? Or do I need to make a hire and go full-blown COO and spend $250,000 a year? Like, there's got to be some in between. So help us navigate that road.
Yeah. One of the things that we do at A Squared is we're wanting to have these nuanced conversations around like, how do you know what kind of support you need when, and how do you approach this? And one of the things that I use as a frame to kind of help people even think just really high level, like what level of person do I need, is thinking about the 3 types of work that you're doing, right? You're deciding what to do. That's type 1. You're designing how that work's going to get done. That's where systems come into play, or even just like, all right, we want to do this event. What are all the steps we got to do, right? Like project planning. That's type 2. And then there's executing on it, actually getting the thing done, right? Conception, planning, execution, you can use all sorts of different frames for this. When you start to think in those frames, a lot of times people then can start to realize like, oh, I don't need someone to just execute. I need someone to plan and execute. And that's where you can kind of start playing with terms like OBM, online business manager, or ops manager, or project manager. The titles are fluid. Like you were saying, there's not a whole lot of definition or rigor around these, and that's fine. But what you need to know is kind of what level of person do I need to bring in? And for most people, it makes more sense to bring someone in at that P level. So COOs are up at the C level, right? They're at the conception level, deciding what to do. A lot of times you can hold off on that for a minute, but bringing in someone to help you take your ideas and turn it into a plan that someone else can execute is usually a good first step for people who don't love that part, which is most entrepreneurs, right? They can come in and say, all right, you want to do this stuff? Let's get all the puzzle pieces together. Let's figure out everything that needs to happen. And then we can talk together about who's doing what. We can project manage this process, right? And start to build an engine around it. That can kind of start to put some framing around when you go out there looking for someone, not just here's the list of stuff I need them to do, but also here's the level that I need them to show up at. And you can start asking questions and kind of even testing them. We have a whole testing process for our folks to make sure that they can show up at the level that you need them to, because no one's going to say they can't. So if you just say, oh, I'll just add an interview question, like, can you help me plan the work? They are going to say yes, right? You want to give them a chance to show you that they can do that and that they're willing to lean in and not do oh, I'm stuck, please advise, and keep kicking the, processing and figuring things out back on your plate, because that's not going to work.
Yeah, that's no fun. That's not an effective hire. So that's the mid level, right? Yeah, and you put BAs, it sounds like maybe one step below that.
Yeah, the way, I define it. And again, you're going to meet some VAs who totally show up in these other areas.
Mhm.
But if they're charging you VA rates, you're underpaying them and they will eventually raise their rates, right?
That's okay.
They'll figure it out that they're providing a lot greater value than the VA kind of standard rate makes sense, which is a whole nother soapbox I'll try to avoid getting on, of the pay structures for these things. But for most folks, it's a lot better to get 10 hours a month of someone who can help you kind of plan and put structure and tracking around the work than 10 hours a week of a virtual assistant if you don't have a good, solid answer to how the work's getting planned.
I mean, I love a good soapbox. You're more than welcome to, because the comments are going to be about you, not about me for once. So that's awesome. Um, but so I'm curious about this role then, because if that's the best first step, which it sounds like it is, it sounds like you're just taking chaos and you're organizing it, which is what most entrepreneurs need, especially in any growth phase.
Yep.
But I mean, what does that role look like long term? Because it sounds like it'd be very easy for that person to organize that chaos quickly, like maybe 3 to 6 months. What is that role? Does it evolve into something? Does it end? Do you then hire VAs? Where do we go from there?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'll share a story for one of our clients that I've seen go through this journey really, really well. So we brought in an ops manager. That's the title we used for her about 6 months ago. And really her goal at that beginning was to start putting some structure around how are we working together? How are we working with clients? How are we tracking prospects? How are we tracking the work we're doing? How are we prioritizing, right? Like just organizing the work together. That took a decent period of time to get that to a place that felt really good. But now that they're on the other side of that, what I've seen with the founder is he's really expanded his ambitions, right? Which is amazing. So he has big plans for this year. He's investing a lot more time in it. Meanwhile, she's becoming the active gatekeeper and protector around him and his time, both from the external world and from all the other priorities he could get drugged down into internally, right? So she's still in that project management / execution role, but they're starting to bring in folks more junior to do some of that execution, start cutting down the costs a little bit that way. She can oversee those folks, right? But she is that first line of defense. Like he's out of his inbox. She's the one turning people away and making sure he's staying within his time blocks for things and has the right amount of calls on his calendar and all of those things, right? So she's become really a leader within the organization and is expanding her role over time, because there's been that path. So we talk a lot about like, all right, we need to think about the structure of how this company runs. And when they start seeing that and being able to build that, they can also see the path of like, why are you doing that? I'm taking that now. Why are you doing that? I'm taking that now. And that just grows over time.
I love it. And then obviously the next phase would be that full-time, like the COO role, really like the person that's going to execute on the vision of the owner, the COO, the CEO, excuse me. So how do we evolve into that? Because as a matter of fact, we just, prior to this recording, we're on your show talking about how the founder should not be the CEO. If I remember, I'll put that in the show notes down below. But this person sounds like a vital piece into helping the owner evolve into the CEO role and actually do chief executive officer things. So how do we start to move the company forward that way? Because I think still nobody wants to be in business to build themselves a job. And long term, we want to get the owner out of that role too. So we go from chaos to organization, evolution of that role. How do we get to COO?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it depends on, the vision of the person in that chair and all sorts of other things. But what I've seen in practice happens is, you end up with a really, really great person in this chair and you start to kind of over time of getting to know them, kind of know the upper limit of what they can do. But you're always pressing against that, which is exciting because that gives them that growth and that kind of leading edge. But some folks, like that's their spot, right? Like they're not going to be up here thinking about like, how are we going to drive profitability next year? How are we going to implement this huge, big initiative or add this whole arm to the business, right? Like they might not feel confident in that yet, right? But that's where you can start looking at things like, hey, we're going to bring in a fractional COO for 2 months to spin this up. And then they can go. And we have the person to help us run the engine going forward, right? or you're bringing in a fractional COO at that level who can kind of come in and bring 25 years of experience or whatever into where you want to go with it. But now you have the brain space to have those kinds of conversations with that person, because this person is running the engine of keeping things actually implemented in the business, right? So it can go either way. You know, I think a lot of times with folks, if we're kind of starting them at this early stage ops manager, they're kind of growing into senior ops manager, at least in the short term, right? It can take a number of years to get from there to more of like a COO level. And that might not be what they want, right? A lot of these folks, I'm speaking as an operator, love being an amazing project manager and keeping the train running. And that's good. You know, that's what they want. That's what they want to do. And they want to be respected in that. And they want to be challenged in that. They want to be key to the team. And they don't feel the need to go wax eloquent about long-term profitability or whatever. You know,
Nothing more boring than long-term profitability, right? Ew, gross.
Blech.
I like how you also just you kicked us out after 2 months. As you know, we do fractional COO work, and you said, "Oh, you just bring them in and kick them out after 2 months." That was nice, Ashley. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you. No, I mean, you could definitely have people come in and like that's their role for a long time, right? Like you're meeting a few times a month, you're looking at big picture strategy. You know, that CEO is coming through and holding you accountable as the CEO to like, hey, because, you know, a lot of great CEOs, visionary founders need someone to put some boundaries, right? So it's like, oh, you know, last month you said you wanted to start this new arm to the business. This month you're saying you want to start this new arm to the business. That's a no, right? You need someone there to kind of curb the shiny object syndrome, keep you focused, keep the eye on the ball, the North Star priorities, all those things. And that can be an amazing long-term role, or it can be a short-term one, you know, but when you have the capacity to make use of a brain like that, things get really interesting.
Yeah, no, I mean, I joke, but on a very serious note, like we're talking, this conversation has gone from $5 an hour for VA to literally up to $500,000 and beyond per year for a full-time CO, like a good COO, for like an average size small business. So that's a big difference. And to bring someone like that in for 2 months to be able to set you up for a full year of execution, I mean, that could make you wildly profitable. So I kid, but it is a great resource to have.
Yeah. Just knowing when and how to leverage more senior talent to then push things back down to more, you know, junior implementation on the team. Because then later is when you can make really great use of admins and VAs and operations coordinators, kind of people who aren't going to cost as much even as your ops manager, but you have everything to help them thrive.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I love this conversation. It makes so much sense. And most people don't clearly understand the difference between the 500,000 and the $5 an hour.
Yeah.
I don't mean from a monetary perspective, but they go in, like we said, wanting a VA to do COO level decision-making strategy work. And it's just not the best, most efficient use of your resources for your business. So let's bring this back to delegation for reluctant delegators. If that's where you find yourself right now, and you just need to start getting things off your plate to get that clarity, what would you say is the best next step?
Yeah. So I think the biggest first question is why? You know, why are you feeling reluctant to delegate? And where do you want this business to go? So, you know, one of the analogies I try that I don't know if people like it as much as I like it is like, if you think about freelancing as hanging out on a boat and drinking a margarita, and building a team-based business as scuba diving, what I see a lot of businesses doing is sitting on the boat in scuba gear, right? So if you're kind of in that spot of like, yeah, I want to scuba dive, but I'm not jumping in, the first big question is why, right? Do I want to build a team-based business? And if so, okay, now it's worth like figuring out and working through whatever's keeping me from doing this thing, right? If it's budget, what I would recommend, to the point of everything that we're saying, is fewer hours of a person at the level that you need, right? Instead of saying, oh, I can only afford a VA. I think most of the time you're going to get more bang for your buck with fewer hours of someone at the level that you need. If it's you had a bad experience in the past, hopefully this conversation kind of helped be like, oh yeah, I got someone at the wrong level. Or it could be just it was the wrong person. And one of the things that I talk to people about is kind of treating it like a bad breakup, right? When you've had a bad breakup, a lot of times at the very beginning, you're just like, I quit love. I'll never date again, right? You quit too much. And then over time, you kind of move the line back to something reasonable. Like, okay, what really happened there is I was dating a narcissist. So maybe I don't date a narcissist again, right? You find the right level of quitting to match your previous experience. But most of us start way too broad and then we have to bring it in. And when you think about it that way and kind of acknowledge the real pain that comes with a bad hiring experience and a bad team member, that can kind of ground that process of then saying, okay, I have what I need to try again and have a better chance of success next time. So yeah, there's lots of, stuff that goes into that. But in terms of preparing to have better success, the first thing that I recommend always is just getting a big picture view of where you want this person to be, the engine you want them to run, right? So we use just a mind mapping tool to do that, where if it's your client experience, it's like, okay, someone says yes, what happens? Great. What happens next? What happens next? What happens next? Let's get it all down on paper. It doesn't have to be pretty. And then you can look at that and say, all right, I need somebody to own all of this. And here are the pieces I want to keep. And that becomes the basis of knowing what level you need and what you need that person to do. And it helps them see what they're fitting into big picture wise, which gives them that path to taking more leadership and ownership over time. If you give them kind of a bucket of car parts and ask them to build a car, that's really hard.
It's not going to go well. I like that analogy. That makes sense. And you have a resource to help the listener figure that out, right? Is that the resource I put on the screen here? Tell me about that.
Yes. Yeah. So our playbook, we aren't hiding information behind the paywall here. We really see what we do is helping people do the thing that's really hard. So this playbook is really step-by-step everything we do with our clients when they're coming in and we're kicking them out of their operations, right? So the promise that we make to our clients is you don't have to figure out how to use us. You don't have to figure out what level you need. You don't have to figure out any of that. You just have to answer our questions. That's it, right? And what we're going through with them is what's in this playbook. So it's pretty long. You can kind of skim it or dive in deeper, but it's meant to give you a picture of step by step. This is how we prepare people to have a really good experience with someone they hire, how we find those people, how we vet those people, how we onboard them, how we support them to kind of getting further and further out of their weeds of their business over time. And if you read that and you're like, this is great, I'm going to go implement it myself, then amazing. I hope it's an amazing resource for you for that.
Your questions are probably not as hard as the ones you asked me on your show. You stumped me with those 3 questions, but they were impossible questions. Again, we'll put that down in the show notes.
I really hit it hard.
And the resource that Ashlee mentioned, we'll also put that down in the show notes. So you can go check that out. Check out the playbook. But speaking of questions, I love to end these episodes with a question, but it's a question from you to the listener. We believe that powerful questions get powerful answers. And what I want to know is, in the context of this conversation about delegation, that next hire, the person that's going to help you organize your chaos, what is the powerful question you want the listener to ask themselves until they get that answer?
Oh, that's a really good question. I think at a foundational level, the big important question is, what vision do you have that you can't achieve without a team? If you answer that question like, actually, like, I really want freedom in my lifestyle and I want to just do the work I'm doing, the hard parts of learning to lead and build a team, you might find it's not worth it, right? But if you drill down and you're like, here's this big, beautiful, hairy, audacious vision that I have, and I can't get there by myself, coming back to that over and over again will help you go through this process and keep at it instead of giving up.
I love it. That's such a great question. Very, very cool. Ashlee, thank you so much for being here. This is a great episode.
Thank you, Brandon. I appreciate you a lot.
For those of you watching, listening, wherever you are, first things first, the link is in the show notes. Go check it out. Download a copy of the playbook to get yourself out of your operations, out of your business, so you can have that freedom back. And second, of course, subscribe. We love bringing these episodes to you 5 days a week to help you grow your business and ultimately build the harmonious business and life that you set out to achieve in the first place. We'll see you on the next episode of Harmonious.